Boris Bonks' Variant Factory. Now, if there are any children watching, this story is not for you. But it's all about a man called Boris Bonka, who had a factory for making variants. Boris Bonks' Variant Factory. Or some people just called it the Bonkers Variant Factory. Boris Bonka had put Ivor Grancock in charge of the variant factory, which tended to be quite busy during a pandemic. But Boris Bonks' previous personal assistant and main operative, Mr. Long Shortcomings, had told everyone that Boris Bonka knew that Ivor Grancock was useless at the job. Ivor Grancock had managed to make one variant, but Boris Bonka was still not satisfied. Ivor Grancock had almost achieved 100,000 variant tests in one day, after he had said that he would. Anyway, luckily for Boris Bonka, just at the right moment, some photos popped up that Grancock popped up on, and Boris Bonka said that Grancock was doing a great job and that he had sacked him. So then Sad Hadit was put in charge of the variant factory and quickly got to work. He explained that he was going to say that Grancock's pandemic was over and he was starting a new one of his own. This message was then ruined by Sad Hadit catching Grancock's pandemic just before it finished. Sad Hadit was supposed to have been talking to Andrex Moore on a Sunday morning, but because Sad Hadit was now isolating at home, there was of course no possibility of him talking to Andrex Moore because he was in a different place. Now, Sad Hadit had also been talking to Boris Bonka and Itchy Sooner at Boris Bonka's house, and that meant that Boris Bonka and Itchy Sooner should be staying at home too. But they were keen to pilot a new scheme called One Rule for Us and One Rule for Them, except it wasn't actually new, because Mr. Long Shortcomings and others had started that scheme the year before. So Andrex Moore had to explain that Boris Bonka and Itchy Sooner would not be staying at home, but would be using their new pilot scheme. However, everybody except Boris Bonka and Itchy Sooner knew that One Rule for Us and One Rule for Them was really, really unpopular. And as soon as Boris Bonka and Itchy Sooner heard this, then they changed their minds. They also changed their minds about what they had been planning to do and forgot that plan completely. So, Sad Hadit could move on to making the new variants. Now, Boris Bonka wanted everyone to join in with making these new variants. He gave everyone in the country a golden ticket on Variant Freedom Day to come to the variant factory. But he was so generous that he didn't just invite people to come to the factory, he invited them all to help in making the new variants. Boris Bonka and Sad Hadit were aiming for 100,000 cases per day, and that would be more impressive than Grancock's 100,000 tests per day, because many of Grancock's tests might not even show real cases, and anyway, some of them were lost in the post. So Boris Bonka was doing everything that he could to help make new variants. Boris Bonka found out that all the variants were called with special posh letters called Greek letters, and he was very excited because he knew what all the Greek letters were. He thought it would be wonderful if he could make the Upsilon variant, and then 3 more called Phi, Chi and Psi, which would be a hat-trick of variants, and finally the Omega variant, which would be his crowning glory because that was the last letter in the Greek alphabet, and so he thought would be the final variant. He realised that if people wore masks, then they were not as good at making variants, and so he told people they didn't have to wear the masks anymore. Anyway, all the people were at the Boris Bonka big new variant factory, and many of them, but not all, lived unhappily ever after with their new variants. I hope you enjoy that story more than you enjoy the real life version. Thank you.